I'm hanging out with Charlie, and he's got his hand on his hip. He's looking a little sassy, right? He's a little sassy because he's got low back pain right now, so he's not that happy. He's got a lumbar disc that is pinched and impinged, and the reason is, this is my diagnosis, is that he's got a shortened or tight psoas muscle. So let me show you where the psoas is so we can get Charlie some relief as soon as possible. So the psoas muscle connects to T12, which is at the base of the thoracic spine, connects to L1 through 5, or up by the sacrum. So all of these vertebrae have part of the psoas coming out and coming across the front of the hip. Here's the hip socket, and then connects into the top of the femur. So this practice takes care of stabilizing some of the muscles that might be weak, and also opening, stretching the psoas muscle, as well as strengthening it. Here we go. Take an all fours position and extend your leg out behind you. Now make sure that you don't bring it too high so the lumbar isn't compressed. Bring the leg to about parallel to the floor and squeeze the gluteus muscle as you extend the leg. And then pull the belly up so you're strengthening the core, and hold it there for about 30 seconds. You can add the opposite arm if you have your balance. You can reach your arm forward. Another thing you can do after you do a hold is to bring the knee in and out. In and out. Remembering to extend the leg using the glute and the quad. So really strengthen your lifted leg. And then you'll do both sides, holding the leg out, extending the arm, and then doing knee in, knee out, knee in, and knee out. After you do that, you can come onto your back and take a block between the knees. And then lift up into bridge pose. Hold the rails of your mat, and you'll go up and down. That will strengthen your gluteus muscles, and that'll help start to open up the hip flexors. Up and down. Okay, so you'll do about 10 to 20 of those and do about 2 rounds. Another way to strengthen the glutes and open up the hip flexors is to come into bridge, a low bridge, you don't have to go very high, and extend one leg. That's going to make this glute and hamstring work a lot, as well as open up the front of the hip this way. Make sure you're rolling the shoulders back, so you're not letting the shoulders round. Puts too much stress on your neck. Okay, so make sure you do both sides. You can hold the leg up there a good 30 to 40 seconds if you've got the strength. All right, and come down. So you'll do about 5 to 10 of those. Then give your knees a gentle hug. That'll stretch your lower back, so that'll feel good. And then to stretch the glutes, before we get to stretching the psoas, is you can do this figure 4, which is nice. Make sure to press the knee away, flex your foot here to protect your knee, and keep the low back nice and long. And then cross the other side and do the same thing. Okay? So after you do that, you can do a psoas opener by taking a block under the sacrum and extend one leg. See how we're opening up the psoas here and still using the quadricep and the glute, because the glute is the antagonist muscle to the psoas, so you want to use these muscles to extend the leg. So you'll hold this position for about 30 seconds, and then you can do the other side. Make sure not to overarch the back, so that's overarching. That's going to compress your lumbar disc. So draw your belly in, extend through the leg. If you want to get the upper part of your psoas, you're going to bring your arms overhead and reach through your arms. Okay, and then press into your feet, lift up through your hips, and lower down. And you can give your knees a hug again. and relax your lower back. Okay, let's do a little bit of abdominal strengthening. So one problem people have when they do Navasana or boat pose is they overuse their psoas muscle and underuse their abdominal muscles. So I have a little trick for that. If you hold behind your thighs and you lift your chest and you pull down on your legs and you make sure your lumbar spine is in, keep your feet on the floor for this Navasana and just lean back. Now here I'm obviously using my core and less my psoas because my feet are on the ground. But I'm making sure that I don't round this way. So I'm trying to keep my chest lifted and keeping my feet on the ground. The psoas is still contracting, but it's contracting less because I'm not having my feet up. If my feet were up, then of course this would be leg or hip flexion, and that would be using the psoas a lot more. So here, more core. Another thing you can do after you do that, what I call feet down boat, you can go into low boat, which is tip the pelvis back, extend through your legs, and still hold here. So here you are retroverting your pelvis, or you're tipping your pelvis back, and you're engaging your abdominal muscles. But because the leg is extended, you're not using the hip flexors as much. Up. That's a tough one. Okay, once you do those strengthening exercises, for the core, your psoas should be nice and ready to stretch. Of course, one of my favorite psoas stretches is to do a low lunge, but it's not the typical one. Some people practice lunge and they just let it kind of sink into the hips like this, and there's no muscle energy in the legs or the core. If that's the case for you, then that means you might be overstretching your psoas and compressing your lumbar. So I like to pull everything back in, draw my belly in, and root my tailbone down. That's where the core work is going to help. And once I have my low back in a neutral position, I'm going to let the pelvis start to move forward. Now right here I start to feel a stretch, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to add the arm, and that's going to give me the upper part of the psoas. Since the upper part connects to the upper lumbar and T12, thoracic vertebra number 12, adding the arm is going to allow you to get up to the upper part. And then when I add a side bend, as long as I'm not overstretching and collapsing in my legs, then the side bend will actually help open up the psoas even more. And then come on out. And you'll do the other side. Same thing. Tip the pelvis back, draw your abdominal muscles in and up, draw your legs together so you feel your legs are working, and then start the lunge. Add the arm, and then side lunge. You don't have to side lunge very much, and you don't really want to compress your right lower back when you're stretching your left. You want more lift up through the spine. So keep the arm reaching up more than over. And breathing. And then coming out. Okay, so to get further stretch into the psoas and the hip flexor and the quadriceps, now we're going to add the rectus femoris, which is a quad muscle that helps or synergizes with the hip flexor. Luckily, I have the wall right here, so I'm going to take my right knee back to the baseboard. I'm going to bring the foot right up the wall, and some of you are going to stay right here, keeping your hands on your hips. Now, right now, I feel my belly kind of collapsing forward, so I'm going to take my abdomen, my lower belly, and I'm going to move it up towards my chest and draw my tailbone down. And then I feel immediately more stretch in the front of my hip. So stage 2, and don't be in a rush for this, some of you may never get to this stage, is to bring the foot onto the floor. And now we're here. So this stage makes my low back even more hyperextended. So I have to really use my abdominal muscles more. I'm also using my glute, my left glute, by pushing down on my left foot. I'm able to synergize the glute and the core together. to stabilize my lumbar spine while my psoas continues to stretch. And then we can also add the arm, both arms, which will give you a little bit more of length in your upper part of your psoas. And where I feel this right now is really my quadricep muscle and partly in my hip flexor. Okay, so come on out and do the other side. Make sure to bring the knee all the way back to the baseboard and start in position 1, which is knee down, front knee down. And get used to this. You can bring your hip slowly back to the heel of the foot that's on the wall. And then stage 2 is to bring that foot under. And there's no hurry to get to this stage because it's a lot more intense. And you don't really want to stretch your psoas if you are compressing your low back. So take your belly, lift it up, use your lower abdominal muscles, press down on your front foot, and as you draw the tailbone down, you can start to move the hips back towards the heel that's on the wall, and then you add. Stage 3, which I didn't show you on the first side, but you can do, is to grab the wrist and arc just a little bit, and that might give you a little more psoas stretch. Okay, and then come on back out. So that's pretty strong, but if you get that far and everything feels really good, then the quintessential sort of psoas quadricep stretch pose is Virasana. And Virasana can give a lot of challenges in people's knees, but for healthy knees or rehabilitated knees, this is no problem. So you would take and just flatten your calf muscles. Don't roll them out, just flatten them so that you can have a little seat. And then flare your toes out and squeeze your ankles and your shins in. So now I'm sitting in between my ankles. For some of you, this might be too much. So then sit up on a blanket. Now this position, your psoas is not stretching, right? It's shortened. So you want to add, let me scoot up a little bit. You want to add leaning back. And for some people, I recommend using a bolster so that you don't have to go back as far. Now that you're reclining, you've taken your spine from an upright position and you've reclined the spine back, which makes the psoas stretch more. Right now the psoas is lengthened. If I can go down a little further, I'll take that out. Now the psoas is going to be even longer. And if the psoas is really challenged, it's going to arch the back off the floor because it's attached to the lumbar spine. So I need to come up onto my elbows, lengthen my tailbone a little more by trying to draw my lower belly up. My toes are very active, my feet are active, my shins are active, and as my tailbone lengthens, then it's asking my psoas to stretch more. And I can feel this. And then of course, if you want to add a little more to the upper part, you bring the arms overhead. Okay, so this is not a resting pose. My feet and legs are working as I'm reclining back. Make sure that when you come out of this pose that you extend the leg behind and really tighten the quadricep and the muscles around the knees just to support the knee joint. And then do both sides. I also like to add a little calf stretch because my calves were working in that position. Okay, you should be good to go, and please modify so that you have a sustainable yoga practice and you can practice for decades to come.